Good afternoon. The Subcommittee on Cybersecurity, Infrastructure Protection, and Innovation will come to order. Good afternoon, everyone. I want to thank the co-chairs of the Cyberspace Solarium Commission and Commissioner Spalding and Ravitch for participating in today's hearing. And I'd also like to thank the gentleman from Louisiana, Mr. Richmond, for allowing me the honor of chairing this subcommittee in his absence. I had the privilege of serving on the Solarium Commission with the witnesses testifying here today. And I can honestly say that working on a report was one of the highlights of my congressional career. Research, outreach, and deliberation was a testament to our two co-chairs, Senator King, here today to testify this afternoon. And I hope our subcommittee will take full advantage of the wealth of knowledge of the virtual witnesses, the witness table. The Commission's report outlines a strategy of layered cyber deterrence and includes 82 recommendations on how the government can implement the strategy. I'm looking forward to discussing those recommendations with my colleagues today, particularly those that would strengthen the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency by increasing its capabilities and clarifying its relationship with the intelligence community and sector-specific agencies. I'm also looking forward to covering the essential role of Congress in implementing our nation's cybersecurity posture. From the outset of the Commission, and thanks to the work of our dedicated Executive Director, Mark Montgomery, we deliberated with a bias toward action. After all, as the members of the subcommittee know full well, the status quo in cyberspace sees us making steady progress while the threat increases exponentially. We need to act, and act now, to change that dynamic and get ahead of the curve. I'm proud to report that leaders of this subcommittee, including Chairman Richmond, Ranking Member Katko, and Representatives Jackson Lee, Rice, Slotkin, Green, and Joyce, all have recommendations to the forthcoming National Defense Authorization Act and impending to implement aspects of the Solarium report. It's an honor to share the virtual dais with members committed to addressing this quintessential information age challenge, and I'm sure the committee and the subcommittee will continue to play a vital role in implementing the report. I encourage our witnesses to discuss why Congress is so important to moving the conversation forward on cybersecurity. And I encourage my colleagues to probe the decision-making behind the strategy and recommendations. The events of this year provide an interesting context in which to review the Solarium recommendations. The COVID-19 pandemic has upended and altered the way we live, the way we work, and the way we govern. Overnight, nearly half of employed adults became teleworkers, putting added stresses on our infrastructure and creating new opportunities for hackers to wreak havoc. Now, Congress is holding remote hearings, and state and local governments have become e-governments with little time to transition. Many state and local governments are also finding that due to antiquated IT systems and the fact that their data aren't in the cloud, that they're unable to scale and secure vital programs like unemployment insurance, highlighting the need for modernization as part of the security push. Our adversaries have noticed the broader attack surface. Just yesterday, CISA, in conjunction with allies in the UK and Canada, announced that Russian operatives are targeting healthcare organizations doing research on the virus. And 2 days ago, we saw a major breach of Twitter that saw many prominent accounts linking to a Bitcoin scam. It doesn't take much imagination to see what chaos one could sow with such access on election day if a bad actor was pushing out disinformation. The realities of 2020 make clear that a comprehensive whole-of-nation approach to cybersecurity is necessary, is a necessity, but we do not yet have one. So we lack a clear leader in the White House whose mission it is to focus on cybersecurity. We lack clear understanding of roles and responsibilities, both within government and between government and the private sector. We lack clear metrics to measure our progress. The Cyberspace Solarium Commission report cannot fix all of the challenges that we face in cyberspace, but it does chart a bold course, and it does not shy away from the trade-offs we will need to make to decisively improve our cybersecurity posture. The report makes clear that everyone, from government to private sector companies to Congress itself, needs to make meaningful changes. We need to expect more from government, closer coordination across agencies, stronger collaboration with critical infrastructure, and critically, a greater emphasis on planning. And we need to strengthen government agencies, in particular CISA, to do so. We also need to expect more from the private sector. We need companies to truly accept the risks that they take in cyberspace by accepting the consequences of failing to protect their data and networks. We also need technology companies, what the report calls cybersecurity enablers, to do more to make the secure choice the default choice. Too often, we see a rush to be first to market, not secure to market. Too often, we see entities like ISPs not protecting their small and medium-sized customers because they don't believe it's their job. More importantly, where the public and private interest at the nexus of critical infrastructure that this committee is charged with protecting, we need to ensure the private sector is doing its part to protect itself while acknowledging that they can't go it alone. So this is part of the end state we desire in the Solarium report, a state where we are resilient enough to deter our adversaries and agile enough to push back when they insist on testing our defenses. To that end, end state is in reach, but it will require the work of this subcommittee and of the experts that we have invited before us if we are to achieve that goal. So I look forward to beginning what I'm sure will be a fruitful series of discussions on how to implement the Solarium report. I again thank our witnesses who are here today. Grateful that the co-chairs of the Cybersecurity Commission to be here, Senator Angus King and Congressman Mike Gallagher. I'm honored that Suzanne Spalding could be here as well, and look forward to all of our witnesses' testimony today. With that, I'm now proud to yield to Mr. Katko for his opening remarks.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate your comments. And before I begin, I want to congratulate one of the Solarium members on the birth of his first child. Representative Gallagher, Grace Ellen Gallagher, came to this world not too long ago, and we welcome her in. And I'll hoist a pint in her honor soon. I want to thank all the commissioners for their work on the Cyberspace Solarium Commission and congratulate them on producing a truly game-changing report and recommendations that accompany that report that take a bold step in the direction of reinventing our nation's cybersecurity policy and architecture. The Commission's legislative proposals accompanying the recommendations are enabling Congress to act quickly and decisively on these urgent measures. I'm interested in all the recommendations in the report, and I've gone through all of them, but I'm really focused on several of them today. And they are as follows: strengthening the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Agency, or CISA, and its workforce, evaluating CISA's facilities needs, strengthening the CISA director position and making the assistant director's career positions, the National Cyber Director, authorizing CISA to threat hunt on the .gov domain, developing a strategy to secure email, and modernizing the digital infrastructure of state and local governments and small and mid-sized businesses. As ranking member on the Cybersecurity, Infrastructure, Protection, and Innovation Subcommittee, my top priority among the Commission's recommendations is strengthening and clarifying CISA's authority and vastly increasing its funding to allow it to carry out its role as the nation's risk manager, coordinating the protection of critical infrastructure and federal agencies and departments from cyber threats. I introduced this recommendation as a bill together with Mr. Ruppersberger and co-sponsored his amendment to the NDAA, which requires CISA to assess what additional resources are necessary to fulfill its mission. This assessment should examine CISA's workforce composition and future demands and report to Congress on the findings. Under this bill, CISA would also evaluate its current facilities and future needs, including accommodating integration of personnel, critical infrastructure partners, and other department and agency personnel, and make recommendations to GSA. GSA must evaluate CISA's recommendations and report to Congress within 30 days on how best to accommodate CISA's missions and goals with commensurate facilities. The facilities evaluation dovetails with the Commission's recommendation for an integrated cyber center within CISA. That is critically important. In conjunction with Chairman Richmond's CISA Director Amendment to the NDAA bill that I co-sponsored, I reintroduced my CISA Director bill. The bill and amendment elevate and strengthen the CISA Director position to reflect the significant role that it plays in making the position the equivalent of an Assistant Secretary or Military Service Secretary. They limit the term of the CISA Director to 2 5-year terms, which ensure the agency has stable leadership, and depoliticizes the Assistant Director positions by making them career positions. A related amendment that my fellow colleague, Mr. Green, co-sponsored and I co-sponsored clarifies CISA's authority to conduct continuous threat hunting across a .gov domain. This will increase CISA's ability to protect federal networks and allow CISA to provide relevant threat information to critical infrastructure. Finally, the recommendation to establish a national cyber director within the White House, offered as an amendment to the NDAA by my colleague and friend, Mr. Langevin, is another legislative proposal I am co-sponsoring. This presidentially nominated and Senate-confirmed National Cyber Director would be the principal cybersecurity advisor to the president, tasked with developing, counseling the president on, and supervising implementation of a national cyber strategy, which is sorely needed. This leadership will bring focus to our nation's cybersecurity as a top strategic priority. I look forward to hearing from our witnesses today about these Solarium recommendations and many others that fall under the jurisdiction of our subcommittee, as well as working with my colleagues to attach many of the Commission's recommendations as possible to the NDAA, another must-pass vehicle or pass as standalone bills. I want to thank the chairman for holding this important hearing. I look forward again to convening in person with my committee colleagues, but I want to take a moment before I close to really commend the members of the the Solarium Commission. Mr. King, Mr. Gallagher, Ms. Spalding, Mr. Langevin, and all the others. I think that what you did is what they did after 9/11 with respect to terrorism. You're anticipating the issues before we have a catastrophic attack. And I commend all of you for doing that. And that's why I think this is such an important hearing we're having today. So the bipartisanship that's been shown on this, the lack of politics and understanding the issues and understanding the threat and attacking it, is exactly what we should be doing, and I commend everyone for that. With that, Mr. Chairman, I yield back.
I can't hear.
I can't hear anything, Jim. Say.
Yeah, I was muted. Sorry about that. First of all, I thank the ranking member for his comments, and I want to join with him. First of all, I want to thank you, the ranking member, for his leadership on cybersecurity issues as well. It's been an honor to join with the ranking member on these cybersecurity issues that are before us and that are moving their way through the Congress. I also want to join the ranking member in congratulating the newest father in the House, Mr. Gallagher, on the birth of his new baby girl, Grace, and I wish all the best to your entire family. My congratulations. Also, I should mention my faux pas, not when I mentioned the Senator King as co-chair along with Congressman Gallagher and Suzanne Spalding. I glossed over and unintentionally didn't mention Dr. Samantha Ravitch's name, but I'm going to read bios on each of them in just a minute. But I welcome, obviously, Dr. Ravitch and thank her for her participation and valuable contribution that she made to the Solarium Commission report as well. So with that, I thank the ranking member again Members are reminded that the subcommittee will operate according to the guidelines laid out by the chairman and ranking member in their July 8th colloquy. With that, I ask unanimous consent to waive the committee Rule 8A2 for the subcommittee during remote proceedings under the covered period designated by the Speaker under the House Resolution 965, and without objection, so ordered. The chair now recognizes Chairman of the full committee, the gentleman from Mississippi, Mr. Thompson, for an opening statement.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chair and Ranking Member, and our witnesses today. As you know, the Solarium Commission is very forward-thinking, something. I compliment our witnesses for their brilliant work that they've done on it. I compliment you personally, being a member of our committee, having served on it. And I have a written testimony for the record. In the interest of time and getting us forward, I'll submit it for the record. And
I thank you, Chairman Thompson, and I thank you for your leadership, both of the full committee on a whole host of issues, but for your leadership and support on cybersecurity in particular. You've been incredible, and I thank you for that, your leadership there. I understand that Mr. Rogers is not able to join us. Is that correct? Okay, I believe that's the case. So Mr. Rogers is not here. Then with that, again, I thank the chairman, and I now welcome our panel of witnesses. First, I would again like to welcome Senator Angus King, the former governor of Maine, who served as co-chair of the Solarium Commission. Senator King currently sits on the Senate Armed Services Committee and the Select Committee on Intelligence, among others, and has been a vocal leader on cybersecurity throughout his tenure. I welcome the senator here. Next, Representative Mike Gallagher, co-chair of the Cyberspace Solarium Commission and current member of the House of Representatives for the 8th District of Wisconsin. Mr. Gallagher is a member of the House Armed Services Committee and a former member of this committee. And I would also like to welcome Mr. Gallagher back to the committee again, back to Congress after his paternity leave. And I thank him for interrupting his paternity leave, being here with us. And again, Mr. Gallagher, congratulations on your daughter Grace. In addition to being a huge Packers fan, I know will be incredibly proud of her father for the work that you've done with the commission. Next, we'll hear from Suzanne Spalding, a commissioner for the Cyber Solarium Commission and senior advisor at the Center for Strategic and International Studies. Before that, Ms. Spalding served as the Undersecretary for the National Protection and Programs Director at the Department of Homeland Security, which is now the Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA. So I look forward to hearing her unique perspective and her emphasis on how civics education is an essential component of resiliency. Finally, we have Dr. Samantha Ravitch, the commissioner of the Cyber Solarium Commission and former Deputy National Security Advisor during the Bush administration. Dr. Ravitch is currently serving as the chair of the Foundation for Defense of Democracy's Center for Cyber and Technology Innovation, and I deeply appreciate her coming to speak with us today and for her incredible contributions to our thinking on continuity of the economy planning. Without objection, the witness's full statement will be inserted into the record, and I now ask each witness to summarize their statement for 5 minutes, beginning with Senator King. Senator King, it was a pleasure serving with you on the Solarium Commission, and look forward to hearing your comments here today. You are now recognized.
Mr. Chairman, thank you very much for holding this hearing, and it really means a lot to the work of the commission to be taking this next step. I would say that I use this technology every Wednesday morning for the Senate prayer breakfast, and it seems to work very effectively except when we try to sing hymns. So I think as long as we don't sing any hymns today, we'll be okay. I appreciate your time. I also appreciate the involvement and engagement of Representative Katko, who outlined a series of bills, all of which we think are important. And I really want to thank him for his work. And I want to give a little bit of background. The first thing to observe is that in the last 6 months, we've learned that the unthinkable can happen. The unthinkable can happen. And in the last 48 hours, we've learned that cyber is an ever-present threat. As the chairman mentioned in his opening statement, the attack on Twitter, which was a commercial one, but also the apparent attack by the Russians on the security of our pursuit of a vaccine. It's just a reminder that this is not an academic question, but it's something that is really a front and center in threats that this country is facing. The commission that you've mentioned several times and that Mike Gallagher and I were privileged to co-chair was set up in the 2019 National Defense Act. And it had a unique structure. It had 4 sitting members of Congress, 4 members from the executive, and 6 members from the private sector. And I can honestly say that throughout our deliberations, and we had over 30 meetings, had 400 interviews, thousands of pages of documents, there was not a single moment of partisanship or of partisan discussion. In fact, I have no idea the party affiliation of the other 10 members of the commission who aren't members of Congress. And that, it seems to me, speaks to the importance and overriding power of this issue that really must unite us. So that was the work of the commission. We went through, as I mentioned, 30 meetings together. We had a stress test. We had a sort of contest of ideas in the middle of last summer, and we really tried to approach this with fresh eyes to look at really 2 basic questions. What should our strategy be, and what should our organizational structure be to both to protect, to prepare, and to prevent cyber attacks? As you mentioned, there are 82 recommendations in the report, 54 of which have been converted into legislative recommendations and presented to the various committees of both the House and the Senate in the form of fully drafted legislative proposals. What we're talking about is what's called layered cyber deterrence. And that means resilience so that our adversaries feel that there's not much to be gained by attacking us because of our security and our protection of our systems, but also a declaratory policy that if attacked, we will respond. One of the deficiencies in our cyber posture over the last several decades has been we have a deterrent strategy for a major sort of threshold of use of force, but we haven't had a strategy and we haven't articulated a doctrine that would provide a deterrent for less than use of force kind of cyber attacks. For that reason, as I've said many times, we're a cheap date. Our adversaries don't compute the cost of attacking us. That has to change. That's the strategic picture. The organizational picture is that cyber is scattered throughout the federal government. It's in the Defense Department, it's in the intelligence community, it's in DHS, it's in the FBI, and we really need to try to straighten out the organizational structure. One of my observations has been that messy structure equals messy policy. And that leads with the creation of a national cyber director in the White House, appointed by the president, confirmed by the Senate, which will give continuity to this important interest. We want somebody in the federal government who wakes up every morning with the mission of protecting this country in cyberspace. Finally, one of the crucial elements that we tried to address in the report, and frankly, it's a difficult one, is the relationship between the government and the private sector. 85% of the target space in cyber is in the private sector. The private sector computers, whether they're in the financial sector or energy or transportation or telecommunications, they're the frontline troops in this battle. And yet it's the federal government that often has the resources and the expertise and and the ability to pull together this information in order to protect our country. So I'll go back to, I think one of you stated, I think Mr. Katko, Representative Katko stated, and Mike Gallagher said this was our mission from the beginning. We wanted to be the 9/11 Commission report without 9/11. And that's really what we've tried to focus upon in this project. So I want to thank the committee, and now's the time to put these recommendations into law, into practice, if we're going to protect our country in the way that we all believe it can be done, and certainly it should be done. The unthinkable can happen, but we can be prepared, we can prevent, and we can protect this country. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Senator King. Again, thank you for your leadership on the Cyberspace Solarium Commission. As one of the co-chairs, you did an outstanding job, and I was proud to serve on that commission. Thank you for your testimony, and now I recognize Congressman Gallagher to summarize the commission statement for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chairman Langevin, not only for chairing this hearing today, but for your immense contributions to the commission. Our final report would not have been possible were it not for your leadership. And in many areas, we were building upon work that you've been doing for the last decade. And so it was really great to get to work with you. Thank you to Ranking Member Katko for your engagement from the start of this effort, for meeting with us and our staff multiple times, and for your leadership on these issues. And thank you, Chairman Thompson, for giving us this forum today. Let me just echo what my co-chair, Senator King, who's married to a Packers fan, I should note, said at the outset, which is, you know, we come from different parties. We were appointed by partisans on different sides, and certainly the outside experts, Commissioner Spalding and Ravitch were as well. But it would have been impossible to determine the party affiliations if you were just to listen to one of the many debates we had as we met as a commission. And I think what came out of this process was a truly nonpartisan report that attempts to put the interest of the country ahead of any parochial or political interest. And so this really has been an issue that every presidential administration for the past 25 years, Democrats and Republicans, has tried to figure out: how do we defend U.S. interests and promote U.S. values in cyberspace? And despite these well-intentioned efforts, our networks are vulnerable, if not already compromised. Our country has lost hundreds of billions of dollars to nation-state sponsored intellectual property theft via cyber means, and a major cyber attack on our nation's critical infrastructure and our economic system would create chaos and lasting damage. And so in an effort to forestall such a future, the Cyberspace Solarium Commission examined a broad range of structures and policies that could more effectively defend our nation in cyberspace. I should admit our public relations plan, when we released the report publicly on March 11th, 2020, did not factor in a global pandemic taking over the conversation, but that's all the more reason why it's important to have hearings like this today. And we hope that not only will you digest our full report, but also read our pandemic annex. But I just would highlight a few of the commission's key recommendations up front here. One, reform the U.S. government structure and organizations for cybersecurity. That starts with establishing a national cyber director situated within the executive office of the president, who's Senate confirmed and supported by the Office of a National Cyber Director, as Senator King outlined. It also continues with strengthening CISA, as Representative Katko outlined, so that CISA can better serve as that central coordinating element to support and integrate the federal, state, and local and private sector cybersecurity efforts. And I think it's important to note that the overall approach we're taking here is not to create a bunch of new organizations within the federal government, but rather an attempt to elevate and empower existing organizations like CISA, who have made important progress in recent years, but need more support from Congress. Second, I just would say we have a variety of recommendations on promoting national resilience, specifically that Congress should codify the roles of sector-specific agencies, focusing national risk management efforts, and also developing and maintaining a continuity of economy planning process so that we think through the unthinkable now, so we're not having to make things up on the fly in the wake of a cyber 9/11. And then third and finally, I just would highlight the need to reshape the cyber ecosystem towards greater security. We are recommending, for example, that Congress establish and fund a national cybersecurity certification and labeling process to establish and manage a program on security certification and labeling of ICT products, as well as establish a Bureau of Cyber Statistics charged with collecting and providing data on cybersecurity. These recommendations and many more like them in the report are all designed to implement the Commission's recommended strategy of layered cyber deterrence, which is our theory for how we evolve into a harder target, a better ally, and a worse enemy, and how we better defend our nation, our economy, and our way of life in cyberspace. And so thank you for giving us the opportunity to present our findings here today. We look forward to the debate. And again, I just want to highlight not only the contributions of the commissioners that you'll hear from, but also our wonderful staff who has dedicated a year of their life to this important effort. I yield back.
Thank you, Chairman Gallagher. And again, I commend you for your leadership on the Solarium Commission. Both you and Senator King made a great team and co-chairing the Cyberspace Solarium Commission. We're greatly indebted to you for your work and your service. With that, thank you for your testimony, and I now recognize Ms. Spalding to summarize the Commission's statement for 5 minutes. Commissioner Spalding, you're muted. We need to unmute you. There you go. You're unmuted.
Thank you, Chairman Langevin. Thank you, Chairman Thompson, Ranking Member Katko, and members of the committee. Thank you for this opportunity to be here today to testify. It's an honor to be here with my fellow witnesses, and particularly Chairman Langevin, an honor it was to work with you again, having worked with you in 2007 on the Commission for Cybersecurity for the 44th President, which you co-chaired. And I want to thank you for your long, outstanding leadership on cybersecurity issues. And the bipartisanship, nonpartisanship, which you've heard today, really that tone was set at the top by our two co-chairs, Senator King and Congressman Gallagher. So thank you for that. And of course, a pleasure to work with Commissioner Ravitch. I want to touch briefly today on 3 key areas that I think should and must be acted on very quickly, given the vulnerabilities, particularly as we've noted with the pandemic. The first is strengthening DHS's Cybersecurity and Infrastructure Security Agency, or CISA, as the organization that I once led at DHS is now called, thanks in no small measure to the work of this committee and Chairman Thompson, and I thank you for that. With malicious cyber actors targeting hospitals, vaccine development, and governments at every level, and a stay-at-home workforce presenting a massive attack surface, CISA's work has never been more important. This is why the Commission urges Congress to provide CISA promptly with the resources and authorities, including administrative subpoena authority, that it needs to be the national risk manager, to serve as the central civilian cybersecurity authority to support federal, state, local, territorial, and tribal governments and the private sector, to conduct continuity of the economy planning, a concept that Commissioner Ravitch brought to the Commission, so important, identify systemically important critical infrastructure, and coordinate planning and readiness across government and the private sector. Second, with regard to improving the cyber ecosystem and reducing vulnerabilities, the Commission turned first to improving the efficiency of the market. We looked at why isn't the market performing its function of driving better cybersecurity. A key reason we determined was that markets need information to operate effectively. So we ask that Congress establish that national cybersecurity certification and labeling authority, the kind of underwriter laboratories effort that Congressman Gallagher mentioned, publish guidelines for secure cloud services, create that Bureau of Cyber Statistics, promote a more effective and robust cyber insurance market, and pass a national data breach notification law. Finally, I believe one of the most important pillars in the report is resilience. We need to reduce the benefit side in the adversary's cost-benefit analysis. Often, that means reducing our dependence upon those network systems, developing redundancies, maybe even analog systems. Paper ballots, for example, are a way of building resilience into our election infrastructure. We have a number of urgent election-related recommendations, including reforming regulation of online political advertisements, providing grant funding for states to improve election systems, replace outdated equipment, ensure voter verifiable paper-based systems, and conduct post-election audits. These are perhaps the most urgent of our recommendations. And I'd like to close with our recommendation to build public resilience against information operations that target elections, but also democracy as a whole. Media literacy is important, but we also need to focus on deterring the key objective of our adversaries, which is to weaken democracy by pouring gasoline on the flames of division that already engulf online discourse, pushing Americans to give up on institutions, not just elections, but the justice system, the rule of law, and democracy itself. They portray our institutions as not just flawed, but irrevocably broken. Where protesters and judicial reform advocates seek changes to make our institutions and our nation stronger, our adversaries seek only to make us weaker. They want Americans to despair at the prospect of bringing about change, to despair at the prospect of being able to discern fact from fiction. They want to destroy the informed and engaged citizenry upon which a healthy democracy depends. To defeat our adversaries' objective, the Commission calls for reinvigorating civics education to help Americans rediscover our shared values, understand why democracy is so valuable, that it is under attack, and that every American must stay engaged to hold our institutions accountable and continue to move us toward that more perfect union. Thank you for this opportunity, and I look forward for your questions.
Thank you, Commissioner Spaulding, again, both for your participation and valuable contributions to the Solarium Commission, but your broad dedication and work on cyber in general. With that, thank you for your testimony. And finally, I now recognize Ms. Samantha Ravage to summarize the Commission statement for 5 minutes. Dr. Ravage, you are now recognized.
Thank you. Thank you, Chairman Langevin, Chairman Thompson, Ranking Member Katko, distinguished members of the committee, and my fellow witnesses, whom I have grown to know and greatly admire over this past year. I thank you for inviting me to participate in this important hearing about one of the most pressing questions that our government is currently tasked with answering. What steps can the federal government and the private sector do to defend our businesses, our military, our citizens, our country against future cyber attacks? Our recommendations in the Solarium Commission focused on shaping the international cyber battle space, hardening our resilience, and maintaining our capability, capacity, and credibility to impose costs on the adversary, all in the service of deterring the type of catastrophic attack that our two esteemed commission chairmen laid out in plain speak in the opening pages of the report. But we would not have lived up to the great responsibility given to us if we had not thought about what our country would do in the aftermath of a significant cyber attack. So I want to spend the next few minutes underscoring one of the Commission's recommendations: the need for the U.S. to develop and maintain a continuity of the economy, or COAT, plan, which was introduced last month as a bill in the Senate Banking, Housing, and Urban Affairs Committee by Senator Peters. During the Cold War, the United States developed continuity of operations, COOP, and continuity of government, COG, plans to ensure that the government could reconstitute and perform a minimum set of essential public functions in the event of a nuclear attack. While COOP, COG, stones of government contingency planning for the last 60 years, no equivalent effort exists to ensure the rapid restart and recovery of the U.S. economy after a major disruption, despite the 2017 U.S. National Security Strategy identifying economic security as national security, and the recognition that the private sector, as much as the U.S. government itself, is a critical component of the security of our populace. So think about it for a moment, what it would mean for the U.S. military and the security forces of our allies if there was a major attack on bulk power transmission, not only knocking out the lights in major metropolitan areas, but taking transportation systems offline. Or if the major stock exchanges were compromised, if wholesale payments, medicine, telecommunications, and trader logistics were brought down. And now think about the difficulties that would create for mobilizing and deploying forces if this all occurred during a time of international crisis. not knowing which plane, train, or bus to hop on to get to the rally point, leaving loved ones at home, scared, in the dark, and not knowing if their medicine or baby formula will still be stocked at the local Walmart. Much of the economic base in the United States potentially losing complete access to their data for good. Creating and exercising a continuity of the economy plan will serve as a visible deterrent to adversaries by demonstrating that the United States has the wherewithal to respond to a significant cyber attack. It will show that we will not be cowed, and that if the economy upon which our livelihoods depends is brought down by an adversarial cyber attack, they, the adversary, will feel our wrath. Our Commission's recommendation on COAT revolve around, in part, determining any additional authorities or resources that would be required to implement plans in the case of a disaster, and establishing a framework for rapidly restarting and recovering core functions in a crisis, giving precedent to functions whose disruption would cause catastrophic economic loss, lead to a runaway loss of public confidence, imperil human life on a national scale, or undermine response, recovery, or mobilization efforts in a crisis. Continuity of the economy planning might also further review the feasibility of disconnecting critical services or specific industrial control networks if national security concerns overwhelm the need for internet connectivity. Continuity of the economy planning should also further explore options to store backup, protected data across borders with allies or partners, particularly in areas where economic disruption in either country could have cascading effects on the global economy. This could include technology that considers what seed data would need to be preserved in protected and verified format, with a process to assure no compromise or manipulation. And finally, COAT must take into consideration the lack of readiness by the general public. By its very nature, continuity of the economy planning will not prioritize, it will only prioritize the most essential functions of the country and the locales, both to enable a rapid recovery from a devastating cyber attack and to preserve the strength and will to quickly punish the attacker. Many industries will not be included in this planning, and most citizens will not be able to rely on government assistance in the period following an attack. But as is also true of natural disaster preparedness, the American people do not need to be helpless. DHS and other relevant agencies should expand citizen preparedness efforts and public awareness mechanisms to be prepared for such an event. COAT, along with many other recommendations in the report, seeks to build upon the work of the Cybersecurity and Information Security Agency, CISA, at DHS, what they've been working on for the past couple of years, and seeks to ensure that the U.S. is prepared to respond and recover to the full range of disruptive cyber attacks below and up to the threshold of COAT. While it is true that there is no magic solution that will protect the U.S. from cyber attacks in perpetuity, there are steps that the federal government can undertake that will significantly improve the government's ability to protect and defend itself from hostile cyber operations. So as we sit here in our virtual COVID world, trying to think the unthinkable and plan for the unplannable, we must ask ourselves the hardest question of all. What would a cyber day after look like if we didn't undertake continuity of the economy planning? So I thank you for this opportunity to testify. Questions and discussions. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you, Commissioner Ravitch, for your testimony, and again for your leadership on cybersecurity. You made valuable contributions likewise to the Solarium Commission process and its recommendations. With that, again, I thank all the witnesses for their testimony. I'll remind subcommittee members that we each have 5 minutes to question the panel, and I now recognize myself for 5 minutes to begin. I'll start with you, Senator King. Yesterday, we saw a multinational coalition announce that Russian agents were targeting vaccine research through cyberspace. In this pandemic, healthcare networks are incredibly important to our security, and while it's not clear whether the Russians were seeking to destroy data, the attempts are clearly troubling. So how would a national cyber director play a role in preventing incidents like this, and why did the commission find this construct most efficient?
Well, I think that the key is to have someone in overall charge. As I mentioned before, we've got responsibility for cyber scattered throughout the federal government. A variety of different agencies, a variety of different authorities, funding levels, but there's no central coordinating function. There's no person with the authority of the White House to settle turf wars, to oversee budgets, and to basically forge cooperation through the various agencies that are involved. I think it was one of the most obvious suggestions of the commission that we talked about. Now, we had quite a bit of discussion about where it should go and how it should be structured. But the conclusion, one thought was elevate CISA or create essentially a new cabinet office. We rejected that because, number one, it would take a long time. Number two, it would be duplicative of other functions that are already there, and it wouldn't have the power and authority of the White House. So the model we ended up approaching it as is the U.S. trade representative, who has responsibility for trade that cuts across a lot of federal agencies, is presidentially appointed, Senate confirmed, and has that authority within the executive office of the president. But the fundamental idea, and I was in business before I got into politics. When I was doing contracting, I wanted one throat to choke. And that's what we're really talking about here. One person that is responsible can be held accountable. And I feel this is actually a favor to the president to have somebody in that office that he or she can hold responsible for and will be accountable for all the various complex operations of the federal government with regard to cyber.
Thank you, Senator King. I completely agree with that and concur with you. Congressman Gallagher, on Wednesday, we both testified before Chairwoman Maloney and the Oversight and Government Reform Committee, and you said something very interesting about ensuring we appropriately balance offensive and defensive cyber. Why is strengthening CISA so fundamental to the Commission's report?
Thank you. Well, I think first, let me just connect it to what Senator King just said. I mean, not only is it important to have a national cyber director to do pre-planning, coordinate all the efforts of the federal government, but as I alluded to in my opening testimony, we have organizations right now that are doing good work, and we really felt the best path forward was to elevate, empower them, and give them the tools they need to get the job done. Strengthening CISA in that regard is perhaps one of the most important recommendations in our final report. And as Senator King and I point out in the chairman's letter opening the report, it's not just a matter of better enabling CISA to be able to do that defensive mission. It's not just a matter of giving CISA, for example, the authority to do persistent threat hunting on .gov networks in the way that Cybercom and NSA can do that on .mil networks. It's also a matter of making the mission of CISA so appealing that CISA can compete for talent with the likes of Google, Apple, Facebook, and win. And we know we can't compete when it comes to what we can pay some of the most talented cyber warriors out there, but we can compete on mission. Indeed, that's one of the things that General Nakasone told us about the NSA. While he worries about retention, he can always compete on mission. And so by giving CISA that elevated position, that really appealing mission, we believe that we can sort of solve the human element that is endemic to every cyber issue. Because at the end of the day, while discussions about cyber can get very technical, they can devolve into jargon about, you know, this technical issue or that, these are fundamentally human problems. I mean, my understanding, at least, of the Twitter hack this week was that it was they fooled a human being into providing administrative credentials that resulted in the attack. And so our greatest failures have been human failures. Our greatest successes will also be human successes. And so empowering CISA, giving the director a higher level of authority and a longer term is one step towards that sort of human solution to human problems in cyber.
Thank you for that answer, and very insightful and helpful for everyone to understand. And I certainly deeply appreciate the work of Director Chris Krebs, that's the team there, but they also actually need added resources and be able to grow their inherent cyber workforce and inherent capability there too. Look forward to supporting that effort. So my time has expired. I now recognize the ranking member of the subcommittee, Mr. Katko, for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, and thank you all for really a great conversation. And it's wonderful to hear people not sniping from side to side, but just all being on the same page about what we need to do in a bipartisan manner. It's truly inspiring. I do want to talk a little bit more about the leadership issue because I think it's critically important. It's a central focus upon which all this other stuff can happen. And for 20 years, I was a federal organized crime prosecutor, and part of that was doing the organized crime drug task force cases. And we had our quarterback, and that was the Office of National Drug Control Policy. And he was be able to look over all the different disparate agencies that had a hand in drug enforcement and kind of be that person that the president needs to advise him on all drug-related matters. So I know, Senator King, I heard you talk a little bit about the leadership position, why it's important, but I want to drill down a little bit farther, just so people understand why we need it, similar to the ONDCP position. So, Ms. Spalding, perhaps you can talk about why a national cyber director is important, and what are the different agencies that are involved in the cybersecurity? Because I know we have Homeland Security and the Department of Defense. There's a lot more. So I'd like to kind of get an understanding of why we need this coordinated position.
Yeah, Ranking Member Kaka, thank you. You're absolutely right. There is really no major agency in the federal government that isn't in some way involved in cybersecurity. And certainly every agency is involved in ensuring that it is able to perform its mission essential functions on behalf of the American public in the wake of cyber threats and cyber risks. The National Cyber Director is absolutely essential because we cannot help but have this cyber activity distributed across the government. The Department of Energy is they are the experts in the electric sector. Treasury is really the expert in the financial services sector. And having those agencies be able to bring that sector expertise together with cyber expertise is really important. So if you're going to have it distributed at NSA and FBI and DHS and DOE, and et cetera, then you need that central coordination function. And that's why that National Cyber Director is so important. And again, having been the undersecretary that was the equivalent of the director of CISA, I think that White House support is critically important. It really should not in any way undermine CISA's coordination role across civilian government and with the private sector, but stand behind and give the imprimatur of the White House as CISA endeavors to undertake those activities.
Okay, thank you very much. And in the interest of time, I'll forego asking Senator King because really I understand fully what the issue is. But I will note that from the leadership position and having that consistent leadership at the top of CISA and depoliticizing the assistant director positions are very important adjuncts to that and attracting and maintaining the talent. But I do want to talk for a second because we have 4 nuclear power plants in my district. We have major grid issues in upstate New York. So, Ms. Ravitch, I wanted to ask you real quick about my concerns in that area. Some of the most vulnerable areas of our nation's infrastructure and our local municipal utility services often have limited budgets to support their cyber capabilities. And was there a discussion at all during the commission's work as to how to potentially assist state, municipal power and water utilities with their cyber-related mitigation and controls and coordination?
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. We actually did look particularly at water utilities. There are 70,000 water utilities across the United States. There are 3,000 water utilities alone in the state of California. That's equal to all electric utilities across the country. Many of them are very small. Many of them to cut costs and deal with personnel issues for the last number of years have put on incorporated some technology that frankly isn't safe. Some of the technology has has been made in adversarial countries, and now it is in our water system. So while you may be able to live in the dark for a day or two without energy, try living without water. And so we recognize this, and when we have long conversations about what can be done to help state, local, tribal, territorial especially, and ask for, as a recommendation, the creation of a cybersecurity assistance fund, knowing that, again, state, local, needs best practices, needs assistance. They're not going to be the repository of all cybersecurity best practices. To make us all safe, we absolutely have to, from the federal government on down, help the smallest among us.
Thank you very much. It's an important issue, and I have plenty more questions, but I know I'm out of time, so I yield back, Mr. Chairman.
Very good, Mr. Katko. Thank you for your line of questions. And I just wanted to yield to, if the chairman is on, still yield to Chairman Thompson. If not, we will go to Congressman Sheila Jackson Lee. Okay, I believe Mr. Thompson has stepped away, so Congresswoman Sheila Jackson Lee is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate this very important hearing, and I'm delighted to be here with some very important witnesses that include Commissioner Ravitch, as well as Commissioner Spalding and my colleagues, Representative Gallagher and Senator King. Thank them both for their service on this committee, and particularly I'll join with my voice, Congressman Gallagher, to congratulate you on the birth of a beautiful baby, and I might imagine where opportunities are not limited. So I'm delighted and wish your family the best. This is a very important hearing that deals with addressing the question of the recommendations by the Cyberspace Solarium Commission related to how the federal government can be more secure. I'm wearing a mask because I'm in the epicenter here in Houston, Texas. Just came to my office to be part of this very important hearing, but we're fighting against very large numbers of COVID-19. In fact, of course, we're about 75,000 cases here in Houston, my hometown, and 717 deaths. Interestingly, cyber is part of how we will survive, because many people have turned towards cyber and connecting through this system. I wholeheartedly agree with the need for a cyber national director, and I support that. I'm also introducing an amendment to NDAA to protect the security of emails, and I want to thank Congressman Langevin for his leadership and support of the amendment, co-sponsoring, as well as Congressman Gallagher. I want to raise two questions as quickly as I can. Yesterday, we were alerted to a coordinated hack of major U.S. Twitter accounts, including those of President Obama, Elon Musk, Bill Gates, Mike Bloomberg, and former U.S. President Joe Biden, and many others. At this time, where misinformation poses one of the greatest threats to national security, we need cybersecurity policies that will uphold the truth. The Commission made a number of recommendations designed to improve collaboration between system and the private sector. And so I would appreciate it if I first go to Commissioner Ravitch to elaborate on any recommendations that you believe would have the potential to prevent a similar breach, in the fact that we have asked for our private sector. I think the government needs to not deny the First Amendment rights, but has to have a forceful place in this. And I'd welcome the comments of our two co-chairs, Congressman Gallagher and King, but I'll start with Commissioner Ravitch on that question. Let me ask my second question, just so it's on the record for answering, and that is, we are very much dependent potentially on the ending of COVID-19 on vaccines. We've just determined over the last couple of days that Russia has been interfering with the cyber or the research on vaccines by a number of our companies, which really mean life or death for many Americans. So Commissioner Ravage, would you answer the first question about the violations of Twitter accounts? And thank you.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. We absolutely looked at, and this was again before COVID started, and we're all working from home and relying on these devices, on these networks to be able to interact with our government, to be able to register to vote, to be able to go to the DMV virtually, our Social Security payments. And now we're realizing that many of these networks could be untrustworthy. And so a few things that we certainly highlighted in our original report and then in our pandemic annex, things like the Internet of Things security, that individuals, our populace should not have to be cybersecurity experts. It is absurd in this day and age to say that when my mom or my neighbor goes to the store and buys a router, that they have to be cybersecurity experts to know which one is going to protect them better. The same way, when you see the locked icon on your email, the idea that I should automatically know that this is a trusted certificate. No, there have to be better safeguards in place from the government itself. So the commission really took kind of two tacks at this. One is what is the responsibility inside the government? How can we push ahead with better cybersecurity recognition of what is secure for individuals, that they know what to buy and what not, but also what are the responsibilities from the private sector, right? The government can only do its job if it understands attribution better, what is being attacked, what type of industrial control systems are most in the crosshairs of a Russia or Iran or a China or North Korea, right? So the US government needs better information and data to be able to do intel sharing back to the private sector. So these are some of the things that the commission really focused on, but it has to be a different type of relationship between the US government and the private sector than really existed before if we're all going to be safer.
Thank you. If Senator Gallagher and Representative Senator King and Representative Gallagher could take a moment to comment on Russia's interference
Congresswoman, you're not coming through.
with
Congresswoman Jackson, you're
vaccine
coming through a little
research.
garbled.
Senator King.
Senator King is muted.
Could you restate the question, Congresswoman?
you hear me
I
now?
couldn't hear it. Yes.
Can you hear me now? I'd be happy to. And Senator King, it's regarding, and I thank the chairman for indulging. I just want you to focus on the interference that's been reported by recent reports about Russia's interference in our vaccine research. COVID-19 is a pandemic in our nation, surging in many states as it relates to the work that we're doing here to shore up our cyber system. And maybe Representative Gallagher would comment as well. But the Russian interference with vaccine research, how important the report of the Solarium Commission's report is in the work going forward. Can you hear me? Did you hear me?
Yes, I can. I did. Thank you very much. And first, I want to send my warmest thoughts to the people of Houston. I know what you're going through, and I've seen it and am following it, and it's a very tough time. And I know it means a lot to them that you're there with them on this awful in this terrible time. What the Russians appear to be doing, I think there are a couple of lessons to be learned from this. Number one, there are no boundaries for what our adversaries will do. Number two, the Russians are doing something that the Chinese, in fact, have been doing for many years, which is essentially theft of intellectual property. The estimates are that Chinese theft of intellectual property has cost our economy billions of dollars. So clearly, this is one of the most important areas that we need to shore up our defenses. And we attended to this in a number of different ways in the report. But the fundamental, I think one of the fundamental issues is, as I mentioned in my opening statement, they have to understand that there's a price to be paid for this. If the Russians or the Chinese or the Iranians or whoever it is comes after us and does something like this, and we can attribute it to a particular country, there need to be consequences. There need to be results. Otherwise, they'll keep doing it. Why wouldn't they? So that's the kind of strategic area that we're talking about. But then also we need to be more defense oriented. It's very interesting that I can't remember, 85% of the cyber risk rests upon individuals doing things like clicking on phishing emails. In other words, the most basic kind of cyber hygiene would be tremendously important in protecting our companies and our country from these kinds of attacks. I don't know how they got into those vaccine companies, but it wouldn't be surprising at all if it was some kind of phishing expedition that got the credentials, that got the password. So the government has a lot of things that we can do, and they're all in our report, or many of them are in our report. But we also need to support and encourage the citizens to understand the magnitude of this risk, because it may not be that they hit the Pentagon, but they're going to try to hit smaller companies and get into the system in that way. So you raise a very important question that I think we really have focused upon and must continue to do so.
Thank you.
Thank you so very much. Thank you.
Mr. Joyce is now recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you, Senator King, Representative Gallagher, Dr. Ravitch, and Commissioner Spalding. I join in congratulating you, Mike, on the birth of your wonderful daughter. This is an important time in life, and yet you're stopping that new family moment and joining with us. Each of us is aware of the hostile cyber world. And you mentioned that, Dr. Ravitch. I think that the discussion, Senator King, that you just talked about is important as well. But Mike Gallagher said something that is important to this conversation. Our greatest failure will be in human failures. And Senator King, you mentioned that, how easy it is for someone to open an email and allow that integration into someone's personal cyber world to be shared and ultimately potentially destroyed. 5 years, the DMARC protocol has been established, and it is deployed very, very sporadically, but it has increased. And what I'm going to ask both you, Commissioner Ravitch, and Commissioner Spalding to address is what barriers exist to that full deployment of DMARC so that potential integration can occur and potential protection can occur as well.
Okay, I don't know if I should go first. Well, first of all, I think it's a great point, because we obviously would all be more secure if the uptake on protocols like that were more expansive. It goes back to some of the other things that we were looking at on the commission directly, which we'll get to your point. We had looked at things such as final goods assembly liability, right? I mean, you know, kind of, as I was saying before, why should my mom be a cybersecurity expert, right? Mm-hmm. Why should my doctor be a cybersecurity expert? They should be able to go, and the devices that they are buying, they should know that they are secure. The same thing if you sent me an email, I should know it is from you. And right now, frankly, in not all places are things like trusted certificates actually should be trusted. So we didn't want to be too prescriptive in terms of how the private sector needs to start to layer on much greater security in IoT, for instance, and devices, hardware and software. So we recommended a number of different ways to kind of skin that cat. But it is true. We are living in a time where if we don't make these types of devices, hardware, software more secure, we will all be more at risk.
Yeah, Congressman, I couldn't agree more, and thank you for your leadership on this important issue. You're absolutely right that email is one of the most troubling vectors and most frequent and common vectors for malicious cyber activity to get into networks and systems. And DMARC, domain-based message authentication, reporting, and conformance, is one of the protocols that has proven to be most effective, really, at stopping this kind of activity. So critically important. You ask, why isn't it then just uniformly adopted across the board? You're correct that it is gaining ground and its adoption is moving forward. But I think it's leaders, CEOs, boards of advisors, secretaries of departments and agencies, leaders across the board need to support their chief information security officers when they make these kinds of recommendations. It is those leaders that decide about resource allocation, and that becomes very important. To do that, it's helpful to be able to show a return on investment, and that again requires information. And it's one of the reasons that the Commission has a recommendation that would require key companies to report more information about malicious cyber activity so that we can begin to build the kind of a repository of data that allows us to be able to tell those decision makers who are allocating resources the costs of not implementing something as basic as DMARC.
I think that cost issue is important. I just have seconds left, but I'm perplexed by only 80% of federal agencies are reported to be implementing DMARC. Are there specific obstacles that we in Congress should address to see that all federal agencies?
Congressman, I think the number of, I suspect that 80% covers most, if not all, of the major departments and agencies of the government. There are lots of very tiny, the Millennium Challenge Corporation, the Denali Commission, et cetera, that really just need a lot of handholding to make these technical changes. But I applaud you. Keeping their feet to the fire and keep pushing this. It's really important. So thank you,
Commissioner. Thank you, and I yield my time.
I thank the gentleman. Before I turn to Ms. Rice, I need to step away from the chair for a few minutes. There's a press conference meeting with our governor that I need to, virtual one that I need to jump onto. It's COVID related and relating to our small business community. So I will be stepping away as briefly as possible. And Ms. Underwood will be taking the gavel to chair the hearing going forward. And I hope to make it back before the conclusion. In the unlikely event that I'm not able to get back before it's concluded, I do want to thank our panelists today for their testimony, their leadership on the Solarium Commission, and their leadership on cyber, which I'm grateful for. With that, Ms. Rice is recognized now for 5 minutes.
Thank you so much. And I want to thank all of my two colleagues and our private sector witnesses here today, members of this commission. If we do not implement every single recommendation in this report, shame on us as a government. I mean, it is just such common sense stuff. And with everything that's going on right now in the world, we see in this report why it's so important to implement every single recommendation. Congressman Gallagher, I just want to go to you first, because it seems to me that this is a constant issue that comes up between a public and private partnership. And why is it, that it's hard for us to get that right? I mean, do you think it's possible to continue incentive-based public-private cybersecurity partnerships as part of an effective cyber defense program? Or do you think it's going to come to Congress having to more strongly consider imposing mandates?
Well, I think the other commissioners would agree that the approach we've largely taken in this report was to try and incentivize the private sector to work more closely with the federal government, or as we say in the chairman's letter, try and incentivize the C-suite types in the private sector to take cybersecurity seriously. There are areas, however, where we are imposing further requirements that some in the private sector will no doubt view as onerous, such as the need for large publicly traded companies to do mandatory penetration testing. But I do think, and to connect it to the earlier series of questions on the Russian hack and things like that, I think culturally what we're trying to do here is shift the culture in the intelligence community and at CISA, and this is my verbiage not contained in the final report, from a culture of need to know to more towards need to share. So it's not just that we need the private sector to step up and do more for their own security, but we also want our cybersecurity professionals in the federal government to be in a posture where they're constantly sharing information with the private sector so that they're seen as a valued partner with the private sector, and the private sector doesn't view them suspiciously. So towards that end, we recommend creating a joint collaborative environment, a common and interoperable environment for sharing and fusing threat information, insight, and other relevant data across the federal government, and then between the public and private sectors. Our recommendation to strengthen public-private integrated cyber center within CISA is intended to allow for that closer collaboration between the public and private sector. And then finally, we have a recommendation about establishing a joint cyber planning office under CISA to coordinate cybersecurity planning and readiness across the federal government and between the public and private sectors. So I guess in sum, I still maintain hope that we can pursue an incentive-based approach, but you're right to suggest that I think everything hinges on the level of trust between the private sector and the public sector, because the reality is, as Senator King and I say in the opening letter, we're not the Chinese Communist Party. We can't just dictate outcomes for the private sector, nor should we want to, right? We want to maintain the free and open and innovative environment we have in America. So it's a delicate balance, but it's one we hope we've struck well in the Commission's final report.
Yes. So it sounds like a little bit of territorialism too, which is one of the things that we learned about in a post 9/11 world. And to see that possibly still kind of rearing its head is not a good thing. I just want to be very mindful of my time and all of our witnesses' time. I have to give a shout out to Chris Krebs, because I think he is doing such a great job at CISA, especially in the area of election security, really reaching out to individual states to help them secure their election infrastructure. But I'd like to ask both Ms. Ravitch and Ms. Spalding, in light of the threats and challenges associated with the upcoming 2020 election, do you think the federal government is doing enough to defend elections from foreign interference?
So I'm happy to start on that. I think not yet, no. And I agree with you. I think Chris Krebs and the men and women at CISA are doing a terrific job and working very hard with state and local election officials, who I think are also taking this very seriously. But in the commission report, we have a number of recommendations that we really hope Congress will act on, and will act very quickly. One of those, obviously, is the reforming of online political advertising to prevent foreign interference in that regard. But the other is providing the wherewithal, the support to our state and local officials, so that in the form of grants, so that they can do the things that need to be done to put secure systems in place, but also to put paper-based audit capabilities in place, so that we can reassure the public about the legitimacy of the process when it is challenged.
Yeah. So let me jump in. That's very thoughtful, as always. That what Suzanne had said. Our commission report, as the two co-chairmen said, has three parts of layer defense. And when you look at elections, each part of that layer defense has to be deployed, right? So shaping international behavior. It's not only us that is being attacked in our election, it's all free and democratic nations. So the idea closer with partner nations, our friends and allies, those who believe in democracy and free enterprise, so that together we can share lessons learned and bolster our systems. The second, resilience. Suzanne spoke about it as always, brilliantly. The Election Assistance Commission needs a stable budget, needs senior cyber expertise, because this is not one and done. It's not like we're going to protect our systems and then that's it. We don't ever have to protect them again. It is going to be consistent and constant. The third part of layer defense is imposed costs. Right. And so the adversaries that try to undermine what makes us a great nation, have to actually really understand there will be costs imposed upon them for this. So the three parts of layer defense, you can see when you look at the question of elections, how they all must relate to one another to make us more secure.
Thank you so much. If we can't protect our elections, I mean, that will doom our democracy, I think, quicker than anything else. So I want to thank you all so much for being here today, and I yield back.
Thank you. I now recognize myself for 5 minutes. I'd like to start by thanking Chairman Thompson for calling today's hearing and Chairman Langevin for his dedicated work to strengthen America's cybersecurity, both as a commissioner and as a valuable member of this committee. Cybersecurity advocates like Mr. Langevin have been sounding the alarm for years about America's vulnerability to cyber attacks. As a representative from Illinois, a state that experienced a major cyber attack in our election system in 2016, I'm well aware that such attacks pose a threat at all levels of government, and so a whole of government response is required. In the last few months, the COVID-19 pandemic has exposed this vulnerability like never before, as Americans have struggled to telework securely, overworked hospitals have suffered ransomware attacks, cyber attacks have targeted vaccine developers, and more. I'm pleased that the Commission built on the recommendations in the March report by publishing a white paper in May on cybersecurity lessons from the pandemic. In this white paper, the Commission found that malign foreign disinformation operations are undermining public health. Quote, "The resulting confusion is threatening to become a literal matter of life and death." Ms. Spalding, can you elaborate on how disinformation impacts our cybersecurity, public health, or other areas of national security, even to the point of life and death?
Absolutely, Congresswoman. Thank you for that really important question. That we have seen our adversaries take advantage of this situation in putting out disinformation around COVID that confuses the public. It may not be that they are able to convince the public necessarily of the narrative that they are pushing, but they create confusion. Which is deadly enough. If the public gives up, as I say, on their ability to figure out what is fact, when at a time when giving the American public facts about what they should be doing to protect themselves, their families, their communities, and our nation, that is extremely destructive. When we see the COVID coming together with our elections, as election officials are making decisions about how to adjust, whether to adjust elections in light of the pandemic, and then those are winding up in courts. And we've seen disinformation around all three of those: COVID, elections, and the courts. And that is a really dangerous combination that threatens the peaceful transition of power.
Thank you. I agree with the Commission's assessment of the severe and even deadly security threat posed by disinformation, which is why in the last month, I introduced the Protecting Against Public Safety Disinformation Act. This bill would direct the Department of Homeland Security to assess malign foreign disinformation operations that threaten public safety and share their findings with state and local authorities like public health departments, emergency managers, and first responders. The Commission's recommendations repeatedly highlight the role of state and local officials in hardening our cybersecurity posture. Ms. Spalding, why is it so important for state and local officials to be involved in our national response to disinformation and other cybersecurity threats?
So we've gotten used to the idea that state and local officials are on the front lines of responding to disasters in the real world. And we have to understand, as you say, that they are also often on the front lines of responding to disinformation that causes confusion in their communities. We know that local sources of information are often more trusted than national sources. And we also know that they are being targeted. Both with ransomware, with traditional cyber activity, but that traditional cyber activity can also be designed to undermine public confidence, so part of an information operation, and they need to be supported in combating that.
Thank you. As you may know, the personal information of 76,000 Illinois voters was accessed by Russian operatives in 2016. Since then, our state and local election officials have been working hard to improve election systems and infrastructure, but due to limited resources, some have faced challenges in upgrading legacy machines and hiring additional cybersecurity personnel. Now, when state budgets across the country have been devastated by this pandemic, federal support is more urgently needed than ever. So over 2 months ago, the House passed a bill, the HEROES Act, which would provide $3.6 billion for election security grants in the state. Unfortunately, the Senate has yet to act on this bill. We know that election security grants like those in the HEROES Act would equip these state and local officials with the resources that they desperately need in order to secure our elections and our national security ahead of the election in November. And with that, I yield back. I have to step away, and so Ms. Rice will now chair the hearing. Thank you.
Thank you so much. It looks like we have come to the end of the questioning, so I would love to thank all of our witnesses for your valuable testimony today and the members for their questions. This is a report that every single member of Congress needs to digest and immediately get on board doing something about and implementing as many of these recommendations as we can. The members of the subcommittee may have additional questions for the witnesses, and we ask that you respond expeditiously in writing to those questions. Without objection, the committee record shall be kept open for 10 days. Hearing no further business other than to congratulate Mike Gallagher once again on lovely baby Grace, the subcommittee stands adjourned. Thank you all.
Thank you.